desk is set up, and Donald Trump, ever the showman, will sit down and pull out one of his famous Sharpies and put his name on some so people can watch him do that. We don't have a very good sense yet from the Trump people of how many that might be. Will it be a handful? Will it be dozens? We just don't know. We do know that when he sat in that same arena yesterday, he said, we're not going to waste a minute. I'm going to take some executive action that you're going to like a lot. We'll just have to see now how many of them he actually does put his name on.
I mean, I've heard everything from dozens to 100. I even saw the number 200 yesterday. But I guess for a lot of the folks who are gathered there at Capitol One, getting this experience of, like we were just talking about, seeing the incoming president, and really it might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for many of them to especially do that in Washington, to actually get to see him take some of those official actions and to enact policies, or at least on an executive level, to change the way that things are done in the United States. I mean, that would be an interesting opportunity, I guess, for somebody who's here as one of his supporters to actually see that happening.
Yeah, and we get those at the White House quite a bit, where there is a bill signing where the president will make some brief remarks and then sit down at a desk surrounded by lawmakers or whomever it might be. And you get to watch them sign it, and depending on how close the microphones get, you can actually hear the pen on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
With Trump, you could hear it very vividly because of that thick Sharpie that
right.
he liked to use. But again, that's a chance that some of us in the White House press pool get the opportunity to be in the room to watch that happen. You don't usually get to see that with 20,000 people in a professional sports arena who might have been there for a concert or
mm-hmm.
for a game. Now get to watch the President of the United States actually put his name on some official documentation. So that would no doubt be a thrill for those folks. Again, like so many things that we remember from that first administration, we just don't know exactly what it is Donald Trump's going to do until he actually does it.
Mm-hmm. I guess we'll be kept in suspense along with the people there in Capitol One. We are still seeing pictures of the front of St. John's Episcopal Church. That, again, is where President-elect Donald Trump is participating in a morning church service before he heads over to the White House, which you also see. That, of course, will be his home for the next 4 years as President of the United States. But it's also where he will participate in a last get-together with current President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, as is tradition for outgoing and incoming presidents on Inauguration Day. So for now, we will leave you with these images, and we will be back shortly to walk through the rest of this Inauguration Day, which, as we have been noted, takes us all across Washington here in the District of Columbia and culminates back at the White House, which you see there on your screen, for the rest of then soon-to-be President Donald Trump's day in office, his first day back as President of the United States. So right now we're going to listen in to what is going on there outside St. John's Episcopal Church, and we will be back shortly to see where incoming President Donald Trump heads after this church service. You're looking now again at the door of St. John's Episcopal Church, where we have just seen Vice President-elect J.D. Vance exiting after this Inauguration Day prayer service. We expect to see President-elect Donald Trump on his way out shortly. They've been in church for about 45 minutes for this service that is part of every Inauguration Day since 1933. And we also understand that the Bidens, you see there, along with Vice President Kamala Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, they have been there at the White House. The Bidens will be shortly greeting the Trumps after the Trumps exit the church service and go over to the White House for this private meeting, a coffee and tea between the incoming and outgoing presidents, another tradition that we always see on Inauguration Day, at least mostly see on Inauguration Day. We did not see that happen 4 years ago when Donald Trump was leaving the White House and Joe Biden was coming in. But we are now looking again at St. John's Episcopal Church. Again, that is where we expect any moment to see President-elect Donald Trump exiting the church, which is just across Lafayette Park from the White House here in Washington, and heading over to the White House to see Joe Biden and Jill Biden for one of their last official acts there in the White House as the President and First Lady. But notably, again, 4 years ago, this is not an exchange that we saw happen when Joe Biden was coming into the White House and Donald Trump was leaving it. We did not see the Trumps as part of that handoff of power between administrations. And so to have this moment and to have several weeks ago see that moment between Trump meeting with Joe Biden at the White House, as we typically do see after an election with an incoming and outgoing president to have their private meeting, which they did. That happened several weeks ago at the White House there in the Oval Office. But we are still watching the door of St. John's Episcopal Church, watching for Donald Trump and Melania Trump to exit this church after the service and head over to the White House to have that meeting with the President and First Lady. And then from there, all four of them will travel together over to the U.S. Capitol for the swearing in, for the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump into his second term as president. And after that, we will see the Bidens leave Washington. We traditionally see a farewell, a formal goodbye of sorts occurring after that swearing in of the new president, where the outgoing president will bid them adieu, and then we will see the Bidens leaving Washington, heading out to Joint Base Andrews, and then onward from there to California. But now we are still looking to watch for President-elect Donald Trump coming out of the White House, or of St. John's Episcopal Church. And as this is happening, we'll just take a moment to kind of think about other things that we are learning and thinking about this first day, which will be officially a half day, but still the first official day of this second Trump administration. We have been hearing about all the executive orders that he plans to sign. We expect that to start pretty much as soon as he is sworn in, Sagar. We've been talking about how that may be happening at several different locations around Washington, from maybe there at the Capitol Rotunda to the Capital One Arena to certainly the White House and the Oval Office after the other official events of the day and when he kind of gets down to business there in the Oval Office.
Yeah, the incoming Trump team has been busy while the president-elect has been inside the church. His team has been busy briefing reporters about what is going to come, and we understand that there will be a whole series of executive actions, as we previewed a little while ago, specifically about remaking immigration policy. That's something Donald Trump has made no secret of, that day one, literally within the first hours of reassuming the office, that was going to be a priority. Unclear how that's going to play out, but that's what we're expecting.
Thank you for that. We will pause here just for a moment and listen in, because I believe that President-elect Donald Trump is going to be coming out of St. John's Episcopal Church.
President Trump! President Trump, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling? President Trump! President! Come talk to us! President Trump! Mr. President, how was service? Mr. President! Mr. President, will you talk to us? How are you feeling? What do you think about the pardons? Mr. President, any response to the pardons? Mr. President, how is this different for you from 8 years ago?
You're watching now as President-elect Donald Trump and incoming First Lady Melania Trump leave St. John's Episcopal Church. They are only on a short drive, though. They are headed to the White House, which is just across Lafayette Park from the church. When they get to the White House, they will be greeted by President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, again for the traditional changeover of sorts, a coffee and tea gathering with the outgoing and incoming president and president's spouse. So we are watching there at the White House, where we anticipate shortly we will see President-elect Donald Trump rolling up. And again, the next time that he comes back to the White House after this gathering, he will be entering it as the President of the United States, not as President-elect. So again, this is one of those moments on Inauguration Day that we typically see and watch for, but we didn't see 4 years ago when it was Donald Trump's turn to exit the White House and Joe Biden's turn to come into it. But we are back on schedule, at least in terms of some parts of this Inauguration Day. It is awfully cold, so we won't see the traditional view on the west front of the Capitol for the swearing-in ceremony. That will be happening inside the U.S. Capitol Rotunda, with a much smaller audience. Only about 600 people can fit in there, according to what organizers have told us, instead of the hundreds of thousands who perhaps would have been on the National Mall to watch the swearing in. But that will be the next stop after this one. Again, we are watching the White House here, where President-elect Donald Trump and Melania Trump will be shortly arriving for their meeting with President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. This is a tradition on Inauguration Day. It's not one that we saw 4 years ago, but it is something that we are watching for today, for the outgoing and incoming presidents to have an informal handoff of power before they ride together to the U.S. Capitol for the formal handoff of power, for the swearing in of the new president and the farewell of the outgoing president. That's what we'll see for Joe Biden and Jill Biden after the official swearing-in ceremony, when they depart the Capitol grounds, headed for Joint Base Andrews, and then on from there to Santa Ynez, California, for some respite and time away after their time in the White House has ended. So, Sagar, we are still sitting here and watching the White House. So after this, where will we see these outgoing and incoming presidents head? Where do they go next?
They will make the traditional ride together, the outgoing president, the incoming president, on that 3-mile drive to the Capitol. Instead of taking that traditional walk down on the West Front, they'll be walking into the Capitol Rotunda for the oath. Notable that it was just 2 weeks ago that much of official Washington also gathered in the Rotunda. That's where Jimmy Carter's body was lying in state. And now 2 weeks later, the public will again be focused on what happens underneath the Capitol dome. That ride together is always fascinating. We've seen images from the early 1900s of open vehicles, and you have names like William Howard Taft and Warren Harding and others riding. And now, obviously not an open top, but you should have Joe Biden and Donald Trump riding together in a armored limousine up to the Capitol, where Donald Trump will go from being the 45th president and an ex-president to now being the 47th president.
Seeing there some of the Trump family members exiting the church, purportedly also getting ready to start making their way over to the Capitol for the swearing in, which will be happening in just over 2 hours from now. Yes, Sagar, I've often wondered on that ride between the White House and the Capitol, what is the conversation like? Obviously, these two, it would be very interesting to know, but I mean, Donald Trump's been there before. He might not have any requests for tips, which another incoming president might have.
I think the thought is, especially with this relationship and that fraught relationship Donald Trump has had publicly with his predecessors, that it would be contentious or that there would be nothing at all. But if you remember during Jimmy Carter's state funeral at the National Cathedral, Donald Trump and Barack Obama sat next to each other and were just looked like they were joking and laughing.
Lots of conversation.
And having fun. Would love to know what it is they were talking about, but they both looked very at ease and almost friendly. And we know that is not, again, at least publicly, the relationship that has been described. So is this going to be Joe Biden giving Donald Trump some final tidbits about the state of affairs? We're going to find out.
All right, we see now images of the motorcade arriving at the White House. Not a very long drive, but especially not, I guess, when you're president-elect. A lot of streets do get shut down for you. But now we see the Vice President Kamala Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff standing there to receive official guests on their last day, also as part of the outgoing Biden and Harris administration. So let's listen in for a moment.